Hey, this is Filbert coming back at you with another video. This one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a bit of a vlog about a trip to Ecuador I just took. I want to first point out that this channel is primarily going to be and going to stay focused on like video and board game content or content adjacent, but sometimes I'm going to mix it with a video like this. Me and my fiance do big trips like this every once in a while. We last year went to Africa for a month, so that will be a video a little bit further down the pipeline. This isn't just like me with the camera in my face gawking at it, because I just find a lot of that not genuine. Like when you watch someone travel, or especially like a food TV show where like everything they eat, it's like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. It's like, no, it's not. you can't eat fried chicken 100 times and each time claim it's like the best fried chicken you've ever had. So I want to, of course, share my experience, just what I'm picking up, gathering from the location, but to put my own twist on it, being a bit of a history buff, and this by no means is going to be like academic, but I'm also going to make sure it doesn't fall in the realm of like bad history. I want to share information, usually historical, about some of the locations I go to. This trip was a short, like 3-day trip. We only spent like 2 days out visiting places. But yeah, after this video, I plan on working on a video talking about, I've been working on it, about choices in games. So stay tuned for that, probably in a couple weeks. And with that said, let's get into this Ecuador trip. So the trip to Ecuador was spurred on because I just recently became engaged to my girlfriend of 7 years. And she still has quite a bit of family down in Ecuador. She goes down and visits them pretty frequently, but I haven't been down there yet. So this was an opportunity for me to go down and meet a lot of them I've never talked to or met before, other than like FaceTime. And as well, without getting into too much personal detail, a few of her older family members are starting to deal with some like health issues. And it's just, unfortunately, we don't know if they'll be able to make it up to the wedding next year. So this was not only for me to meet some of those family members, but to have like a little mini ceremony with some of the family down there. So in case they can't make it, they were still a part of like the whole wedding when it comes to, just like concept and the celebration. The last thing I want to touch on is I'm fine with mostly talking about my personal life when it comes to my now fiance and some of my other family members. I'm not here to make them be a part of these videos or talk about any other personal privacy stuff. So just going forward in this video, it's going to be focused on me. I'm not really going to be sharing like pictures and stuff that have them in it. Some of them might be in some of the videos, but I'm not here to talk about like the little like ceremony and stuff like that's for me, my fiance, and our family. And I'm not here like needs to put their entire life on the internet. And that goes for all my other videos like this too. When it comes to traveling, it's going to be about me. And I also really want to make sure I don't impede on other people's experience, whether they're a family member or just some random person at this like natural wonder with me where I'm like talking to the camera or whatever. So one interesting aspect, as we were flying, we flew over Cuba. So we are from Michigan. We flew down to Orlando, and Orlando straight to Quito. And I didn't really even think about it until after the fact, but we took our flight plan. We went directly over Cuban airspace. Set me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. I learned, because when I would think of Cuba, I would think that was airspace, like commercial planes and stuff went around. It turns out there are 2 air corridors that commercial airlines take over Cuba. Even as a personal pilot, you can apply for a permit to fly over Cuban airspace, but it is restricted airspace. There are a few places in the world there's prohibited where you like can't fly at all. Like that's usually going to be like a military base or something, and then restricted. And Cuba is one of those places where you can't just like fly over willy nilly. You have to get a permit. So you can see in some of the video, there's some like boats, some rocks, and you can see this is actually the Cuban shoreline we're flying over. For the rest of the flight, there wasn't much to see. Obviously, after you got over Cuba, it's basically looking out the window. All you're seeing is the Gulf. And as we got over parts of South America, I did see a little bit of coastline every once in a while, but it was mostly very thick cloud cover. That all changed, luckily, when we started going for the descent. As we got closer to Quito, we broke through the clouds, and you can see just gorgeous views of the city. Through this video, you're going to see about a third of the northern part of Quito. And to me, I think a lot of these landscapes are kind of just breathtaking. They just have that uniquely city appealing view. It's something, for me, there's always two types of like beauty. You have your clear natural beauty, which we'll get into later in this video, but then that like crafted by beauty, whether it's like a gorgeous like monument or building, or this like organic dynamic infrastructure that makes up a city. And Quito itself is settled into like this valley, and as you look down, instead of a lake of water, it's just like this lake of bricks, paints, and lights. And as we fly through this valley, you see these minor valleys within it. There's these sheer cliffs of these smaller valleys. They instantly make me think of like a video game level or movie scene. Those landscapes that provide this, what feel like artificial restriction to the characters, which in reality are truly rare, especially in like an area I'm from Michigan. But here you see it's like imposing. If you get put down in one of these spots, like you can only go like one of two ways, maybe one of three ways. There's physical limitations all around you. So after we landed, the first night was mostly meeting with family, a bunch of great food, a lot of margaritas, and the one family member was like a mixologist, and they were some of the best margaritas I've had. And I'm not just saying that as someone who, like I said earlier, like, oh, this is the best hamburger I've ever had. Because normally I hate tequila. They're made with tequila, but that like tequila like aftertaste I always feel in drinks up here, it was non-existent in these. So in the morning, we had three main areas we wanted to visit. The first being an old volcano, and it is called Piula. And I'm just gonna get this out of the way real quick. Pronunciation, not my strong suit. I'll do my best, but just know that going forward. It is a dormant volcano. Its cauldron is huge, though. It dips down about 450 meters. It has peaks all around it. There are two big breaches in the cauldron, and you can see that in some of these photos. So when I was researching this, first I went to Wikipedia, which is always where I usually start my sources and expand from there. And it dated its last eruption at 467 BCE. But when I started to continue my research, I started finding articles that led me to different sources saying it was last active around 290 CE. Which led me to coming across this research paper published in the National Library of Medicine journal of all places, because of like some like COVID collection of journals that was like freely published. I found it pretty interesting, though quickly I was dealing with science and information, specifically in detail that was beyond my layman understanding. I read through a few sections in detail and skimmed it to form a basic general understanding. If I understand it correctly from a layman, again, I'm not like a scientist, it has likely experienced four significant eruptions. The cauldron formed in an event that lasted around 150 to 300 years, which ended in 467 BCE. Since then, there have not been any like explosive eruptions, but it's estimated in 290 CE there were minor eruptions that were like lava flows through magma tunnels like under and around the volcano. So like the last time it would have likely erupted where you had like any type of like actual explosion, gases, dirt coming out of the ground was that 467 BCE. I do encourage you to glance through the journal and read more about this volcano if it interests you. It was just a magnificent sight. I wish we had time that day to walk down and hike it, but if we did that, that would have been the entire day. As we started to leave the volcano, we drove by the monument to the middle of the world. So I'd never heard of this, and my fiance's uncles were explaining it. So it marks the exact location of the equator. We didn't actually stop and walk up to it. I find locations like this interesting, like monuments like this interesting, but they don't have the same appeal to me as like a actual natural significance of barrier. I guess there is a little bit because we are talking like it's marking like the equator. It reminds me in Africa, we visited a similar location, which was the southernmost tip of Africa when we were in South Africa. I did find that location a bit more impactful, mostly because I stood on the beach looking directly south, seeing only a dark ocean, large clouds miles away. It was beautiful, but gave me a sense of dread, knowing further in that direction is just a vast frozen continent of ice and snow. Little to no humans. If I was plucked from this beach and put in the ocean miles out, even in a boat, I'd be at the mercy of the currents, likely doomed. But that trip is for another story. Where the creator centers on is cool, but it just doesn't have that same appeal to me, so I didn't want to go up and spend time looking at it or anything. It kind of reminds me, it's not quite as weak as this, but like when you're, especially in the United States, there's so many spots that it's like you can stand in this spot and be in 3 states at once or 4 states at once. And like when it's like that's even more artificial, where it's just like these are just boundaries humans drew on a map to say this is where North Carolina ends, and like are cool. So our trip continued back into Kyoto for a second destination, the Virgin of Paisio. When you first see this, you almost certainly think of Brazil's Christ the Redeemer. I was basically told this is Ecuador's version of that. The statue is made out of aluminum. It was constructed in the 70s. Again, I did a bit of research on this after the fact and found conflicting dates. So the statue was assembled in France and then built in Kyoto. When I first came across like the Wikipedia article again, it said it was finished in March 28th of 1975. Again, it's a Wikipedia article. It's just like my starting location, and then often I will look at Wikipedia sources and then start looking at other sources when I'm looking stuff up like this. And I started coming across other websites that stated it was inaugurated and finished March 28th, 1976. And I'm telling you, it was like 50-50. I was looking up this statue and I kept finding like blogs. So they weren't like anything official, like official government websites or anything. So it led me back to Wikipedia. I'm like, what is Wikipedia source? And Wikipedia source was also a blog, which is important to know. Like Wikipedia is a fantastic tool, but a blog should not be a source because like that's just someone saying shit. So I started trying to look up major newspapers in the US on both of those dates because I figured something like this back then would have got some type of headline in a newspaper. And I wasn't having too much success. I spent like 15 minutes doing this. I was like, wait a second. Like, there's a ton of information when we traveled inside it. And granted, most of it was in Spanish, but I figured let me like go comb through video. Like certainly there's got to be a date. And sure enough, going through some videos, I came across a spot on the wall that had 1775 and the date in it. I typed in the words into Google Translate and it translates to erected the monument of the Virgin of Palestino, inaugurated March 28th, 1975. So there's our answer. For what it's worth, Wikipedia was right, even though it was a source in the blog post. So we're on this peak, just nested above Kyoto, and you're just overlooking the city. You can see the area closest to us is like the old colonial part of Kyoto. A lot of those buildings were built by the Spanish hundreds of years ago. There's a bunch of churches there because, of course, this is colonial Spain in the New World. Further back, obviously, where all those like skyscrapers are, though that's the more modern area and like the new financial district. But way in the distance, you can see a volcano looming over the city. It is one of the three snow-covered peaks that surround Kyoto, and this is a volcano. And this is the volcano Canby. So one of the most interesting things I think I learned, just like facts in general about this trip, is about this volcano, even though I didn't visit it. Most people know that Everest is the highest peak in the world, and it rises to 8,850 meters or 29,035 feet above sea level. But a common like bar trivia fact is like, what is the tallest volcano, tallest mountain in the world? And that is actually Mauna Kea, the big in Hawaii. If you actually measure that mountain from its base, like under the ocean, even though it doesn't reach as high over sea level as Everest, it's technically a bigger volcano. But I found out that Canby, the peak is actually the furthest point from the axis of Earth. And that is because Earth is not a perfect circle. Just like almost all bodies, when you're talking astronomical, most planets are essentially a sphere, but because of like rotation, they bulge out. Because of this, the difference of the axis from the poles, so north south of Earth, and the equator ends up being about 43 kilometers or 27 miles, which means since this volcano is almost exactly on the equator, it's bulged out that much more. So even though the volcano is not as tall as either of those mountains, and it doesn't, because it itself is only 5,790 meters or just shy of 20,000 feet. Because that bulge push means it's an additional 43 kilometers or 27 miles away from the actual axis of the Earth. And that's just like that type of like nerd trivia fact that is just really fascinating. I'm surprised I have never heard of, because that does seem like you could word that in a way like in some type of like bar trivia or Jeopardy question to really nail people if you want to get like technical. And part of the reason I do think that is very cool to think about is if you're at that peak, if you're stationary and comparing yourself to anyone else or anything on Earth that is currently stationary, you're moving as fast as possible without moving. And that is because you're the furthest from the axis. An easy way to think about this is you tie a stick to a piece of string and you start swinging that string around so that stick is going around. That stick, and as long as you have tension and staying tight, that stick is moving faster than a point closer to the center, like where you're holding the string. So as that stick moves around, it's moving quicker. So that same logic applies to the peak of this volcano. That said, when we get back to the city of Quito, and I will just let you take in for a moment. I was up on the Virgin of Palestino and just did a 360-degree shot with the GoPro so I can just get a view of the entire city. And I'm just not going to talk. I'll just let the footage speak for itself. So after this, the last spot we wanted to visit was essentially just driving around Quito proper. So we visited both the old town and like the new financial district. A lot of this was just kind of driving, stopping briefly to look at a few uh, older buildings, a few of the older churches. So I don't have too much to share. Here's You're seeing some video of just like occasionally I'll just turn on the GoPro and just capture just what the normal hustle and bustle life is on the streets. And granted, this was during they do like I was told about a 10-day celebration. It's about 5 days before and after the founding of Quito, and the founding of Quito was I believe about 3 days away, 3 or 4 days away when I was taking this footage. So because that, a lot of people kind of show up, and there's some areas you can see like some decorations and whatnot. You can also see this scandalous art. I just thought it was funny. This guy's just carrying this huge painting of a nude woman. Uh, but yeah, that was essentially how we've kind of ended the day. Just kind of traveling around Quito itself, checking out locations, which and we went back to where we are staying, retired for the night, uh, to wake up the next morning to drive out to one of those three snow-capped peaks called Cotopaxi, which is the second tallest mountain in all of Ecuador. We woke up and we started to drive out. The drive took about 2 hours and it was a bit hectic. As you get outside Quito proper, it did calm down and become more manageable. I was not driving, but just even as a passenger, it's just like, holy cow, this is such a different experience than driving in America. Now, during the drive, could see Cotopaxi clearly. There were no clouds, and it again just looked like formidable out in the distance. Here's a few photos I was just able to get online of the volcano. And I'm sharing these ones because unfortunately, when we got to it, the clouds had rolled in. Though I still got a few cool photos when the clouds would break a little bit. And like the other volcano I was talking about, the other two volcanoes I was talking about, I was looking up the history of this volcano. It last had a minor eruption in 2015. From what I read, no one was killed or hurt, it seemed like. As we drove up to the area we are gonna hike around, we seen glimpses of wild horses and wild cows, and we ended up parking and stopping at this wetland, which was known to host a lot of migrating birds. Kind of stop at this wetland, probably feed, drink, rest, and continue their flights. So a lot of the information I couldn't read because it was in Spanish. And here I want to share a few more photos I took of the peak as we're at the base of the volcano. And you can see the clouds broke through a bit where you got to see the peak. So still beautiful sights. Obviously, I wish the clouds weren't there, but it was at least, it wasn't like the volcano was just completely hidden. At times it was, and then at times you get that break and see just that huge, endearing, just slab of earth in front of you. So, and at this location we're at, where I'm taking these pictures and doing this hike, we were about 4,100 meters up. The summit of the volcano itself is 5,897 meters. So, about another additional, 1,700 meters, which also meant we were doing this hike about a little over 2.5 miles up. So we mostly just hiked around this wetland location. For the most part, I didn't get winded, but it was like one of those things where I could tell, like, just walking was took work. And essentially, I was doing like deep, controlled breaths. I was breathing like almost like when I used to run track back in the day, or still when I know I'm gonna go do like a long run, where I just do those like slow, deep breathe ins, slow releases. And essentially, I was doing that like the whole hike, and I was all right. Uh, one thing that did blow me away. So my fiance's grandpa is 90 years old. He had turned 90 earlier this year, and he is like one of those older men that still just like works out and does like his like morning jogs and walks and all that. And he just took off. He literally beat all of us to like this gazebo on the far side of this wetland area. When we got over there, a couple of people are with again, we're just walking and they were just winded, and he even at like the end of it, like did like a little jog, and I'm just like, holy cow, like this guy's 90 and he just got here like it was nothing. And almost all the people I was with were people from Quito. Like it's not even like people like me who are coming from an area that's like I probably live in a spot that's like 300 feet above sea level, and I'm in a spot that's over 2 miles higher than I'm normally used to. As we got to like the gazebo, I kind of broke off because I'm one of those people. I just like taking in nature. I don't need to have words and describe it. A pet peeve of mine, and I'm not here to call people out, but I have friends and family members that I go on trips with, and like sometimes you get to like a super scenic spot, and it's like the whole time they're just talking, 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 and which is if that's how you express yourself, that's fine. But like for me, it's like I don't want just I just want to like stop and just take it in. I don't need someone to describe it to me. I don't need to describe it to someone else. Specifically, when I'm talking like when you're there in the moment. So I like broke off and allowed myself to kind of have that moment. And it being up here just felt so remote, and it just had like a certain level of blissful to it. So I was with a handful of people, like my fiance and her family. We only seen three other people like in this location, and they were on their way out once we got up here. So it's like I'm just like sitting here in the presence of this just formidable presence of this active volcano that is currently in like an active spell where you're not normally when it's not you can climb it, but in its current state you can't climb it. I don't know how much closer we were even allowed to get to it from where we're at. Yeah, just it's just like one of those many experiences, and I don't think it's even unique to this location or Cotopaxi. It's just one of those moments where it's like, yeah, I am like nothing. I'm puny. I'm little. Like, look at the sheer size of the landscape around me, and even this like little wetland. It's like when you just stop and think about like all the water there, all the different life, and all the different types of species that visit here, and it's like, and I do find those moments of like self reflection very helpful, and sometimes just like like just like bring me down, level me out. And I'm not even a religious or spiritual person, and I'm one of those people that I just like these moments. I just think they're just mentally healthy, and in a ways like allow aspects of my like ego or mentality or whatever to just kind of like get pushed back down and reset. And that said, I try and have some takeaway with any trip I do, especially like a big world travel trip like this, but even like smaller minor trips, like even vacations. And that was essentially what I got out of this trip was it was like a good uh aspect to like kind of level me out. And I it should go without saying, the main thing I got out of the trip was how wonderful uh my fiance's family is, soon to be my family. That obviously goes without saying. I'll be talking and kind of gushing more about that if I wasn't respecting privacy and all that for everyone. So yeah, Ecuador is just full of beauty. Apparently volcanoes. I was doing some research and it's apparently has on the mainland 32 active or dormant volcanoes, which is quite a bit of volcanoes for a pretty small country. And whenever I do trips like this, especially like with this trip again, it was pretty short. We left Sunday, came back Wednesday. Uh, it I always still appreciate just how interconnected and easy it is to travel the world. But in short, I don't have too much to say about this vacation. Like again, I said multiple times it was very short. Left Sunday, came back Wednesday. Is really only 2 days of kind of checking out these places, but a lot of time was spending time with like family and doing other things. I do want to state that the next video I have in the pipeline is about choices and what makes like good decisions in video games. So expect that probably in 2 weeks. The next video I'll probably do like this is covering the trip to Africa we did back in 2022. And that was a month-long trip. So I have a lot of footage, a lot of pictures, a lot more to talk about because especially that trip was there straight as like vacation. And we had like tour guides and stuff. And most of that is still fairly fresh in my head. So I plan on covering that. I also did a trip to like Italy, France, back in 2018. So I'll make a video on that as well, but that's even further down the pipeline. So check those videos out. One last thing, if you want to talk games or just hang out, I do also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Filbert. Hope I see you there. You show up, hang out, talk. If not, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoy the ones in the future. Let me know if there's any topics specifically around board game, video games you want to hear me talk about or think are interesting discussions to bring up. I'll happily read them, take them in, and make videos about them. Catch you next time.